Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I am making this podcast to talk about yet another poem, and today's poetry is a work of artifice penned by Marge Piercy. So before jumping straight into the poem, I think I should talk about a little bit about the poet herself. She is Marge Piercy. Marge Piercy was born in 1936 and she is known for being a progressive activist and writer. Most of her works focus on the plight of women in patriarchal society and on social concerns. She received her education at University of Michigan and Northwestern University. Human on the Edge of Time, He, She and It are some of her prestigious works which won for her the Arthur C. Clarke Award in 1993. And her collection of poems, The Moon is Always Female, received much critical acclaim. So the fact that Marge Piercy was a social activist and she was trying to vindicate the rights of women is very much evident in this poetry as well. Before jumping into the poem, I'm going to talk about a little bit on the theme of this poetry so that it becomes understandable to you. The main idea projected in this poem through the metaphorical use of the bonsai tree is that stunting the growth of women is a clever trick played by men. The bonsai tree would have grown 80 feet high if it had been left alone, but was pruned and dwarfed for a particular role. This is what men do to women. They begin early to condition women to fit into socially acceptable roles. They tell them how to feel protected within the domestic walls, look attractive, and do domestic chores. They are made to believe that it is in their nature to be small, weak, and domesticated. It is, however, ironic that men who stunt women's physical, mental, and spiritual growth still look to the women for loving touch, comfort, and admiration. So, in a nutshell, we can say that this poem is a protest. Through this poem, Marge Piercy is lodging a protest against the norms of patriarchal society. Now it's time that I should read the poem very minutely and then explain the lines. So here is the poem. The name of the poem is, again I'm repeating, A Work of Artifice. The poem reads like this. The bonsai tree in the attractive pot could have grown 80 feet tall on the side of a mountain till split by lightning. So these are the first 5 lines of the poetry, and the meaning is, through these 5 lines or through these initial lines, the poet is trying to say that it is usual practice to keep the bonsai tree in a pot in a room as a decoration piece or as a miniature representation of nature. The bonsai tree symbolizes stunted growth. The poet, referring to the bonsai tree, says that it could grow to 80 feet tall if it were allowed to grow outside the pot till it is cut down by lightning. As the poem grows, we realize that the bonsai tree is an oppressed woman who is not allowed to grow fully, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So, in a patriarchal society, men believe that they are the masters and women are the slaves. And they condition women the way they want. They create so many norms, they prepare a list of do's and don'ts, and women have to follow. This is how women succumb to the whims and whimsicalities of men in a patriarchal society. Next lines. But a gardener carefully pruned it. It is 9 inches high. Every day, as he whittles back the branches, the gardener croons. It is your nature to be small and cozy, domestic and weak. These two words are extremely important, domestic and weak. So now I'm explaining the meaning of these lines. So what the gardener does, the gardener who could be the woman's husband or lover. So here gardener is the metaphorical body of the husband of the woman or lover. So the gardener subjects the bonsai tree to constant pruning and does not let it grow more than just 9 inches. The gardener happily tells the bonsai tree that it is in its nature to be small, weak, and domesticated. These words, as I said, is extremely important because this is what happens in our society as well. In a patriarchal society, the master always teaches the slave, that is the women, that they are supposed to be subjugated. They are meek, they are domesticated, they are small and weak. And by repeating these words over and over again, the patriarchal society tries to mold the very psyche of the women. And this is how the idea of imperialism comes. This is exactly the way the patriarchal society tries to capture the body and mind of the women. And this is how the role of subjugation comes. And it comes into play. Next lines. Line number 15 to 19. How lucky, little tree, to have a pot to grow in. With living creatures, one must begin very early to dwarf their growth. So these lines mean that the man in our society, in this patriarchal society, like the gardener, tells his woman that she is lucky to be in a home doing domestic chores as she is small and weak. Just as the bonsai is safe and protected in a pot, so is she in her home. It is clear that he considers her to be a pet, a possession that he keeps protected within the four walls of his room. He is aware of the fact that her conditioning or pruning must begin early in life so that she remains the dependent woman that he so desires. This line is also very important. This thought is also very important. This whole idea of conditioning refers to controlling the way somebody grows and behaves. The man ensures that she willingly subjects herself to accepting the role of a domestic creature, small, weak, and subjugated. As I said, in a colonial subjugation or in a play that is associated with colonialism and imperialism, the colonial master always tries to capture the very psyche of the slave. And the motto is the moment the master is successful to capture the very psyche of the slave automatically accepts his master as his everything. And this is how the master tries to make the slave believe that he is born to be a slave. The way the gardener prunes the bonsai tree, the poet says, in a similar fashion, men in a patriarchal society prunes or controls the growth of women. They narrow down the chances of women. And by doing this, since it has been happening from ages, by doing this, what the men perform, they perform a very fantastic idea. They are successful, or they become successful in explaining the women that they are destined to be meek, to be domesticated, and to be weak. And by practicing the same thing over and over again, they superimpose this idea, and at a certain level, women also start to believe that probably this is their destiny. This is what they are supposed to do. And what they're supposed to do? They are supposed to play the role of a slave to the master. And obviously, men in a patriarchal society presume that they are the masters. Last lines, line number 20 to 24. The bound fate, the crippled brain, the hair in curlers, the hands you love to touch. So these lines are very beautiful examples of the protest that Marge Piercy has made throughout this poetry. She says how men oppress women and stunt their growth. Women are made to curl their hair in order to be seen as attractive or bind their feet to keep them small. Their brains are stunted. They are made to think that this particular way to look attractive suits them, or this is the only way they can be accepted in the society. The last these last two lines are very ironic because the men who stunt the growth of women still want admiration and comfort from them. Is it possible? Or it seems that the poet is asking this question at the very end of the poetry: how is this possible? She is questioning how is this possible? How on earth it happens that you condition women, you make them believe that they are weak, you are very much active to prune their chances, but at the end of the day, you need them in order to have comfort, in order to have love. These last lines are important because they carry the sexual connotation of colonialism. But the poet tries to say that in a patriarchal society, men presume women as sexual objects, and that is why they want them to satisfy their needs. They want them to be to have rather intelligible bodies. Or the definition of beauty that has been set in the society has also been done by the men. This is how they condition women. This is how they teach them how to follow the norms of beauty that has solely been created in order to attract them in a society. So this is the poem, and through which Marge Piercy is trying to make the readers very alert. The word artifice, which implies trickery or artful trickery, is a key to unlock the complexity that has been involved in the poem. As the poem progresses, we have seen that the poem is not about the bonsai tree constantly pruned by the gardener as a decoration piece, but it is a very sturdy tool to represent all women who are oppressed, subjugated cleverly in the patriarchal society. As a plant is confined to a life in a pot, so is a woman in the four walls of her house to do domestic duties happily, as she is conditioned very early to think that it is in her nature to be small, weak, and domesticated. And this idea that women are nature, or uh, nature often becomes synonymous to women, is a very gendered idea. In fact, this entire poetry is posing a question to the whole idea of gender in our society. The way our ideas are gendered, the way our beliefs are gendered. The gardener who stands for a husband or a boyfriend or a lover or a father is happy and proud in stunting the growth of the woman under his church. He ensures that the woman is made to play predetermined role in society willingly and happily. And by predetermined role, I'm meaning the norms of gender, the ideas of gender. And one very simple example of gendered idea is that when a baby boy is born, we give him guns or cricket bats as gifts. But when a baby girl is born, we give him dolls as gifts because we have this gendered idea that a boy is supposed to be a cricketer, a boy is supposed to play with the guns, and a girl is supposed to play with dolls. So, a woman in a society is prepared for her set role, that means gendered role, in many ways. Her hair has to be curly, her feet has to be bound just to look attractive to man, and this idea of women, or this set role of women, that they are created, their only motto is to attract the woman physically or sexually, is enough to convey how gendered this entire society is. And the last two lines of the poem are rather quite meaningful and ironic. As I said, I'm repeating the entire idea once more. The man who oppresses the woman still seeks loving touch from her hands. This is rather very ironic. So you need your slave in order to comfort yourself. And this somehow establishes the Hegelian idea that in order to establish the supremacy of a master, you need a slave. So without the existence of slave, you cannot call yourself the master. That also happens in this poetry at the very last lines. Thus, in this poem, Marge Piercy feels upset that women allow themselves to fit into the roles determined by patriarchal society without any protest. In most cases, the woman remains unaware of the artful trickery played on her to be a useful piece of domestic decoration, a mere thing to be possessed by her man. She does not know that her physical, mental, and spiritual growth is being stunted constantly to prevent any claim to equality and freedom in any way. So, this is how men condition the women so that they can be barred from asking their fundamental rights. Thus, the poem can be read at both literal and metaphorical levels. Its appeal lies in the skillful use of diction and irony. So, hopefully, you have understood the poem, and I'm going to paste the entire poem in my description box. So, if you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you find that my contents are good enough and they are helping you, please stand beside me. Thank you.